Hi, welcome to the first video that I'm doing here on the Elega Corporation channel. I am founder, CEO / single employee of Elega Corporation, Scott Lee, and I am here to introduce you to the story of how I became a software developer / programmer / administrator and all the other things that I kind of do in technology. So some people watching this video know me personally, and they know that a lot of my presence online is spent with game development. So I'm working on a real-time strategy game, and I work in the Unity game engine, but the truth is that most of my day is Salesforce development. And so a lot of the code that I write is very reminiscent of Java, because it's Salesforce Apex, and I've also written some Visual Basic, really heavily into the VBA, like automating Excel type stuff. I've done C#. I have a fairly versatile background as a software developer. So I'm going to tell you the story of how I began my career, basically, because I kind of fell into it in a certain sort of sense. So I talk with a lot of people these days who are interested in what software developers do and programming and things like that. And they're always interested to know how I got into it. And I think some of them, especially for those who are wondering about whether or not they want to become coders themselves, they want to know, well, how did you learn it? Maybe some people have sat down and they've had a really difficult time kind of going through that. In high school, I took my first course on programming, and that's it was a summer course. It was at University of Houston downtown, and it was the only time that I've ever had any formal education at all as far as software development goes, or writing code, programming, anything. I thought it was terrible. I did not want to do software development. I did not want to do programming. I thought Visual Basic made no sense at all, and I also learned the worst possible way that you could learn whenever I took that summer course in high school. Basically, they set you down at a computer, and what we did was we opened up a textbook and we copied things out of the textbook. After several hours of doing that and not really knowing what we were doing as we were copying things down, we would just kind of punch things into the screen, follow the guide in the textbook, run the program, and then okay, it works, I guess. I don't know, what's the significance of this? And we did all kinds of weird projects that, as a high school student, I didn't know the significance of. We did astronomical unit calculators and weird Windows form stuff. But anyway, so I got through with that, and I vowed to myself that I would never do programming ever again. And so then I went to college, and I went to college for like 4.5, 5 years or whatever. And I graduated with my degree, which was in psychology and sociology. I graduated with a double major, and I was planning on going to graduate school to be a psychologist and all of this stuff. So I was into behavioral science for a little while. But I grew up with computers, and I grew up with a love for how those things worked, and I've always kind of had the personality for it, I guess. I think when you have an analytical, introverted personality, it works pretty well for programming and writing code. But aside from that, there was no magic to how I later came to be a programmer or to be a developer. So, and by the way, there is an important distinction between those two words, because it's generally preferable that you're a developer, someone capable of doing some degree of engineering and architecture, as opposed to just a programmer, someone who is basically saying, okay, you give me a specification and I will just write this code for you. Anyway, that's another topic for another video. I had a lot of trouble finding a job. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment in a really bad part of town, but it was right next to work, basically. And yes, I did work in a kind of a bad part of town. But it was an office job, it was a desk job. I worked in kind of a call center environment, and I made phone calls all day. And that's what I did for about 3 or 4 months as a part of that first job out of college. And I had some other odd jobs as well. At one point, I had 3 different jobs. I worked as a security guard, and I worked as a research assistant doing data entry for the University of Houston. And yeah, I don't know. So I started the office job, and I was making phone calls, and eventually some new positions opened up for middle management. I applied for those, and I managed to land a position kind of managing those call center teams. Now, it wasn't like typical customer service. It's a long story, but long story short, those people making calls worked on teams where other people in those teams needed to be doing other data organization / data entry, data management tasks. It was a lot of Microsoft Excel and saving files to places, and you would work a spreadsheet for the day, and you'd essentially drop off the spreadsheet on some network server. This organization had been around since the 1980s, and they had not given as much of a focus to technology as maybe they should have. As a result, I got quite an opportunity there when I was a manager, because as a manager, I had time to delegate out work to other people on the team, and I had a lot of reporting related tasks. And I'll just say it, I had some spare time. I mean, when you have to make phone calls all day, your performance is judged by how many phone calls you can make combined with the quality of those phone calls, right? But as a manager, it's totally different, because you could have a team of 20 or 30 people, and if those 20 or 30 people are performing well, it reflects well on you as a manager. But I didn't really use my time for management. Instead, what I did is I suddenly had an interest in trying to figure out a way how to provide this company a lot of value. And that's really what it comes down to, I would say, with writing code or anything else, okay? Like when you get into software development, it's one thing to get into software development because you're interested in it and because you're interested in how things work, and maybe you're interested in writing code. But ultimately, to succeed in a career, you have to figure out what businesses want, and you need to figure out how to provide that value to them, and what your role is in providing that value. You know, what I figured out is there was a lot of people doing a lot of manual work that really didn't need to be manual work. I set out to automate a lot of stuff. At first, the only thing that I was setting out to automate was Excel spreadsheets, and I wrote macros that would automatically set up someone's spreadsheet for the day. It would save them 20 minutes. 20 minutes when the cost of an employee is maybe $25, $26 an hour. Well, okay, if that's every single day, then that kind of is the beginning of creating some value, right? Because that adds up over time. Then once I automated some stuff in Excel and started kind of going crazy with automating stuff in Excel, to the point where most of my management time was automated. I got to a point where half my workday I wasn't really doing anything, because I had written scripts that would do my management stuff in a matter of seconds. So I ended up not having much to do because I had automated all my work, which is pretty awesome, right? The only thing about it is I wasn't getting really paid that much. If I could get paid super well and automate most of my workday today, and you know, that's the unicorn dream job. I got done automating all the spreadsheets, and then once I had very little to do, they came to me and they said, "Hey, well, you know, we really like what you've done with automating all this Excel stuff. What would you think about working in Salesforce?" Because it was a company that ran primarily on Salesforce, and I said, well, I don't know, but I can definitely try. And so they had a suspicion that I would probably be able to go into Salesforce Apex and pick it up fairly easily. Now, that did happen eventually, but as a self-taught programmer at that place, or actually developer, right, self-taught developer, I was not writing very good code. And I learned that the way that I was writing Visual Basic code was not at all the way that you needed to write Salesforce Apex code. So I had a lot of learning to do, and I spent several months basically just learning code. Really, that was when the bulk of my programming knowledge started to just flood into my brain. I had to learn a lot for this job. But what I ended up doing is I took a process for them that was literally a lot of copy and pasting, taking stuff from certain fields and on a table, and then pasting them into some data entry to signify essentially a transition between states of like this particular record in the database went from this state and now it's going over here to this state. And really what it was is it was transferring between two different departments. I automated that away, and that was previously a 5-minute task, but you had people who would work all day on this process. So that's 8 hours a day per unit. They would be spending 5 minutes at a time. Well, I mean, there were faster people. There were people who could get it done in 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes per record, which was good. My tool, once it was applied, it could process records within a fraction of a second. So you would run batches of 50 records at a time, and those records would get done in about 18 seconds or something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers now, but it was a lot faster. And as a result, you no longer needed those employees to be doing that particular task. They were rerouted to other areas, and then people that normally would have had to have been hired, and the business would have had to have spent anywhere from $35,000 all the way upwards of $100,000 plus for the year. Now they didn't have to do that anymore. But that was value provided to them and not to me. So I was still not getting paid very well. And it was around this time that I updated my resume. I got some certifications in Salesforce. And after posting that resume, I instantly got phone calls and job offers, which offered me a lot more money. From what I was making previously, these were offers that tripled my yearly pay. That's kind of really how I began this whole journey as a software developer. And it wasn't long after that, I think it was a year and a half, 2 years after that, maybe not even that long, that I realized that, hey, I'm writing C# now, and the Unity game engine runs on C#. It occurred to me at that point that I could be writing code for games, and that my middle school dream that I had when I was 13, 14 years old, I could finally come back to it. And not only that, but I got to get out of that really bad one-bedroom apartment, which by the way, was infested with roaches. The service was terrible. I had a pipe burst, and they didn't come out to fix it for more than a week. In fact, it was still broken whenever I moved out. And that was a lot of my motivation, is I was living in that place, and I would walk outside and get offered the opportunity to buy drugs from illegal drug dealers, and these people were just walking around. There were literally like prostitutes in the area that would be walking the streets. It was a really bad part of town. Really, really bad. And there was a couple shootings that happened while I was there. And the whole time I was there, I was, thinking to myself, forget about my college degree, forget about my college career. I've got to get out of this box. I am trapped in here, and I am living with these freaking roaches, and I can't afford groceries, and I'm not making enough money. There's the shootings outside that are going on. I'm getting offered drugs. This is nuts, And so I was just thinking to myself, I got to get out of here. I got to figure out a way out of this box. I'm trapped. And my college degree was worthless. I wasn't going to get anywhere with my psychology degree. And I wasn't going to be waiting around, just staying at that. I mean, maybe if I had to, people, we live where we need to live, and we do what we need to do to survive. But I really wanted to get out of there. And I wasn't going to wait around and try to go to graduate school and go down the whole psychology route to maybe make $70,000 a year as a psychologist or a counselor, which I would have been terrible at, by the way. I'm super, super awful with people. If you think I'm not, I mean, this is just an illusion. This video was saved in editing, I promise. So, but yeah, I was not going to stick around there. And in getting out of that apartment was such a relief, and then that began my journey to get out of credit card debt and a number of other challenges, right? So when young people ask me, what should I do to get started with programming, the number one thing I recommend to them is, you know what, if you think that you're capable of writing code, just dive into it really hardcore for like a week, 3 weeks, get a feel for it. And then if you think that you can do it, just forget about college. College these days is completely antiquated. At least that's my opinion. And my opinion for learning code is you have to sit down and you just have to do it. Just sit down and start doing it. All the resources that I use to learn Salesforce code, 100% free online. I watched hours and hours of free YouTube videos from Dreamforce, and I learned everything all the basic Salesforce admin knowledge, a lot of the basic declarative dev stuff. I learned stuff about code. I came up with my own projects. I sat down, I just started trying to write it, and when I didn't know how to do something, I would just Google it, look on the Salesforce documentation. That was how I began learning. And it's not just that way with Salesforce. You can do that with so many other technologies, whether you're learning Python or C#. I mean, C# is crazy well supported, Java, all these different texts and these common programming languages. I mean, the resources are out there. You just have to sit down and you have to go look. And you don't need an expensive computer or anything like that. So my number one piece of advice to you, if you want to get into software development, if you want to get into programming, is just sit down and go do it. Thank you for watching this video. If you would like to support my game development, these videos here on the channel, or my other series, Gamefinity, over on the Digicades YouTube channel, where I cover gaming industry news and other topics, please feel free for a limited time only to pick up a Elega Corporation logo t-shirt or coffee mug. The t-shirts are $25 at this time until February 6, 2017. The coffee mug is $15. That is a way that you can support this channel, advertise my new brand. If you're watching this after February 6th, it's okay. Go to elegacorp.com. Take a look at whatever else is going on. I will probably have something else for you to look into to support the channel and to support my content and game development and all the other things that I do if you really appreciated this. And if you can't do any of that, then of course, leave a thumbs up, leave comments below, subscribe, and I will talk to you again soon.